Gentlemen, we have a big day ahead of us. I think you're going to, as always, I think you're going to learn a lot. When I say as always, because I see a lot of familiar faces here. I really like this this style of arrangement. I don't like it when we're up on a big podium. I like being a lot closer to all of you, and I appreciate your coming. My name is Alan Wernick. I'm the director of CUNY Citizenship Now. And I want to welcome you to our 15th annual CUNY Daily News Citizenship Now training. We're looking forward to the biggest call-in ever in terms of your participation as volunteers and in terms of the number of calls that we get. Of course, our community needs our help more than ever. The fear that we have seen is something that I have never seen, that I've seen recently, I've never seen in decades of work in this area. We see abuse by unauthorized and unscrupulous immigration law providers. It's become rampant. But I want to tell you just on a personal note that I remain very optimistic about the future of our country and the future for immigrants in our country. The civil rights movement and the anti-war movements, which shaped people like me and gave me the values, helped me give the values and the skills and the commitment that I like to think I carry and bring before you today, I think is going to motivate a similar, the struggle over immigrants' life, Black Lives Matter, and other issues of the day are going to motivate many of our young people in the same way and educate them and bring them the values that I like to think, like I said, that I brought to you today. So I'm very optimistic. I will talk more later today about what's going on in immigration with the deferred action programs, with temporary protected status, how I see the immigration debate unfolding. That'll be my time on the podium is right after lunch. As I said, we expect this year's call-in to be the busiest ever. We've expanded from 48 to 80 phone lines, almost double, because we think the calls are going to be off the hook. But I don't want to speak any further without, I want to continue with our morning program, and I want to introduce first John Jay President Jeremy Travis. President Travis is moving on soon, but we're going to miss him. In his years as president of John Jay College, he has led the college in becoming the premier Justice Studies Institute in the nation. And I don't just say that to be nice. I know that to be true. I've been in CUNY too many years. I don't want to say how many, but I've been here a long time. So I know a lot about the history of the CUNY and of John Jay. And he's been a longtime friend of CUNY Citizenship Now. He and his gracious and competent staff have assisted us in many events over the years. This year's call-in, especially because of all the interest in the issue of immigration, because we're expanding from 48 to 80 phone lines, it's been a particularly challenging for our staff at Citizenship Now, but especially the staff here at John Jay. They have been gracious and competent every step of the way. It's required an extraordinary commitment from them and an extraordinary commitment from the leadership of the college, and that would be President Travis. So if President Travis, you could come up and say a few words of welcome, we'd appreciate it.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to John Jay. I always like to get a little sense of who's in the room. Who's at John Jay for the first time? Ever? Just raise your hand. Yeah. So we're this treasure on the west side of Manhattan, and we absolutely love being a forum for events like this one that are important to the public and important to our city. So please consider yourselves welcome, and I hope that you will come back often. We were particularly delighted when Alan Wernick asked us whether we would serve as host, as venue for this year's Citizenship Now. And it's not just because we're a good citizen of CUNY, but because we have a particular connection to the issues that bring all of you here today. We care about justice. So if you walk around, you'll see that we have many different ways we talk about justice at John Jay. But one of them that's very poignant and very pressing right now is the claims for justice for those who are immigrants, and particularly those Americans without papers. So this speaks to our mission. It also speaks to our student body, and it speaks to our faculty expertise. We have many faculty here who do scholarly work on issues of immigration and deportation and the like. So there's just a natural fit. So when Alan called, it's never easy to put on an event of this size, and we had to find the right dates and all that sort of stuff. And that was the logistical. But the question whether we should do this was an easy yes. So we're delighted to welcome all of you here today and wish you every success. I share with Alan a sense of optimism about the future, even in these very, very troubled times. And we had our commencement yesterday at Arthur Ashe Stadium. We graduated 4,117 students yesterday. I shook hands with many of them. It's our largest ever baccalaureate graduating class. And we have an honorary degree recipient at each of our two ceremonies, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And the one in the afternoon was the person who made me think about today because it was Jose Antonio Vargas. If you know him, he's a journalist, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist in the Washington Post, who 5 or 6 years ago wrote, I think it was an op-ed in the New York Times, maybe the Washington Post, saying, "I am undocumented." So here we have a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, somebody who grew up in this country, considers himself American, but as he uses his language, American without papers. So he spoke to our students about the issues that you're talking about today, the issues of the immigrant communities in our city. And I have to tell you how his address resonated with John Jay students and their families. 40% of our students were born in another country, 68 countries represented yesterday. So this is the American challenge right now, is how to continue that tradition, that honorable tradition of welcoming immigrants. We also know, and I get to speak, as Alan does too, on behalf of the university, that CUNY was founded to be an access institution of high quality higher education for working class and immigrant families. So this is also part of the CUNY DNA that you're representing today. And the final thing I'll say, and I'm sorry that I have to disappear to do other things calling on my time today, but the final thing is just to acknowledge the importance of the Daily News. So we have, on another occasion, we, John Jay, have had a partnership with the Daily News that has been enormously productive, and we came together to rally around, if you remember, the tragic death of our student, Imat Sangien, who was killed 11 years ago. And it was the Daily News who stepped up to help us raise money for a scholarship in her name. So here we are again, just recognizing the power of an important New York institution to be a force for good. And so to all of my colleagues, to Bill and just forgot your name, sorry. Eric, there we go. Bill and I know each other for a long time. I just say, it's so great as a New Yorker to know that there's an institution that cares about the city the way the Daily News does, and I'm really grateful for your partnership as well. So do your good work. Thank you to the volunteers. The fact that Alan's opening to another 80 lines today means that there's something very important public service that you're going to be able to provide, and there'll be lots of grateful New Yorkers without papers, right, included, and students among them, DACA-protected students who will be on the other ends of those phones. So listen carefully, give them good advice, treat them respectfully, and know that you're doing a good thing for the city and for our country. Thanks so much.
It takes a particularly strong and confident and honorable man to say, "I don't know something," in front of this kind of crowd, or woman. Since our founding 20 years ago at Citizenship Now, it's the 15th year with this project, but Citizenship Now just celebrated February 20th anniversary of providing services to New Yorkers. And since then, Jane Sovereign, who's the university interim general counsel and vice chancellor for legal affairs, has been a close friend and a supporter of our work. She and her staff have worked hard to ensure that Citizenship Now complies with all applicable laws regarding the practice of law. So you can be assured that everything you're doing at the call-in will be something that's absolutely appropriate and consistent with all laws and regulations. I think one of her most difficult tasks is keeping me out of trouble. And I truly appreciate you for doing that, because I don't think it's such an easy thing. But she has indeed kept me out of trouble, and I expect to be around the university for quite a bit more time, again, thanks to her help. But more importantly, she has shown a true commitment to the immigrant students in our university, and has done everything she can to ensure that there's a welcoming climate for them. And I can tell you that over the many years there have been controversies and issues about how the university should address certain changes in law and regulations as they apply to immigrants and immigrant students. And at every point, Jane pushed the envelope as far as it possibly could be pushed to ensure that we treated our immigrant students, both documented and undocumented, with fairness and with justice. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Jane Sonner.
Thank you, Alan. And I'm really here on behalf of CUNY's Chancellor, J.B. Milliken, to say thank you to all of you. Of course, thank you to Citizenship Now and the remarkable 2 decades of work that Citizenship Now has done for CUNY and New York City. Thank you to the Daily News for your unwavering support of this important endeavor and being our partner in this for so long and so in such a robust way. We really appreciate it. And most of all, to all of you volunteers, thank you all so much. I know that you all know, maybe from personal experience or others around you, that immigrants make our university, our city, our state, our country better, stronger, and smarter. And we all, I'm sure, want to do everything we can to help welcome immigrants and help them become as much a part of the life of New York City as possible. And I thank you all for your time, your smarts, your language abilities, your communication skills, for all that you are about to do. John Jay, of course, is a wonderful host, and thank you to President Travis, who was just speaking, and to all of you from John Jay. But I would say, most importantly, when you all roll up your sleeves today and pick up those phones, you are going to be changing lives. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Terrific, terrific. I don't know, I'm just thrilled. Every year, you know, I come here and I get so emotional about seeing all of you and the work you do and the speakers that we have to welcome us. Next up, we have Eric Gertler from the New York Daily News, the co-chairman and co-publisher. You know, from the Collins inception, the Daily News has been, of course, key to our effort. Originally, the very first Collins, some of you, I know some of the people here remember that because you were there. We actually held the event at the Daily News headquarters. We had 24 phone lines, 3 in Spanish, 21 in English. And the editor at the time and the vice chancellor who I reported to at the time, you know, questioned me, are people going to be calling? Are people going to be calling? So many people called in the first hour that the phone lines collapsed. They had to bring in technicians. People could not reach the Daily News except through the Citizenship Now 24 lines that we had. So the Daily News has been a terrific supporter. I'm proud to have written for the paper now for over 20 years. I'm very proud that they've let me do that and given me the opportunity to speak about immigration law issues to our immigrant community. I'm proud, of course, to be part of then two great institutions, the City University of New York and the Daily News. Under Eric's leadership, and Eric, by the way, I'm sure he'll tell you, is an immigrant himself. Under Eric's leadership, we expect this year's call-in to be the greatest call-in ever. So, Eric.
I'm a late addition to the program, and with the requirement that I keep my remarks really short. So just a few thanks, and then what I really want to do is introduce our CEO of the Daily News. But John Jay College, thank you very much for hosting us in CUNY. You've been such a great partner. Alan, you really have been the driving force and passion, and so thank you behind this. So thank you for all that you do. Bloomberg LP, congratulations, and thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of immigrants and this program. And then lastly, I just want to acknowledge the work of Brian Adams at the Daily News, who is the force behind all the work that we do on this program. And then, you know, the volunteers, day in, day out, you answering the phone calls and doing something that is such important work, not just for the program, but for this country. As Alan said, I'm a naturalized citizen. I'm not going to get into my story, but just to say that I understand the importance of the work that you're doing. So thank you for being volunteers to this program. But the person at the Daily News who's really done the day-to-day and driving this program, who's really been the person that has been committed to making this happen over many years, has been our CEO, Bill Holliber. Bill has been the CEO for almost 7 years, you know, doing wonderful work at the Daily News while also serving as the CEO of U.S. News. Bill personally can remember the times when we had these technology issues and helped to figure out ways to ensure that the program continued and was being implemented flawlessly. So really, it is my pleasure to introduce Bill Holliber, who will talk about the Daily News commitment. So, Bill, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Eric was so kind. Eric and I have off and on sort of worked together probably about 25 years when you really think about it. Eric was at U.S. News and Daily News years ago and left. He started Daily News website, dailynews.com, and really got us into that business, and took a lot of different paths in his journey. Worked for the city for two mayors, Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor de Blasio in the economic development group. So he knows the inner workings of the city, and we're very fortunate to have him lead us at the Daily News and the U.S. News as well in an understanding about the challenging times that we're having and understanding how to navigate the media business, as you know, as you read about, is interesting. Alan, thank you again for your leadership and commitment to this important endeavor that we're going to be taking on in a couple of weeks and today. It's a real challenge. The Daily News was founded 99 years ago by John Patterson, who just came back from World War I, and he felt he needed to create a media property that identified with, then I guess it was called the working class, primarily made of immigrants. And if people probably might have family, I do, that read the Daily News, they read it for two reasons. One, they wanted to know what was going on in New York City in sports, but they also wanted to learn how to read. And there's a lot of stories that you hear about the importance of learning English and how the Daily News helped immigrants help with that journey. This year, we certainly have had a great response to what we're going to be doing. Today is a very important day for all of you because the anticipation of the amount of calls that are going to happen are going to be significant. It will be promoted heavily in the paper. It'll also be promoted heavily on the website. And if you're not aware, the website reaches all across the United States. We have about 40 million people a month interact with our website around the United States. 80% of those people are outside New York City. So we are probably going to be getting quite a few calls from around the country. And thank God we have a lot of people here speaking a lot of language. How many total is it, Alan?
About 90 languages altogether.
So we think we have it covered. So we'll find out. This partnership has endured 15 years, and it feels like it's getting stronger. We've had some of the best years, the past few years, in terms of the amount of call-in, and it's getting very, very exciting. During the 2 weeks that you'll be, or the week that you'll be fielding all the calls, there'll be a lot of dignitaries coming through, and hopefully they'll be able to share some wisdom. Some might get on the phone and actually help close a deal with someone that needs some help. I wanted to thank Alan again, Monique Francis, the CUNY team, Ebony Mason, and Ada Carino. Again, we wish Chancellor Milliken was here. We know he's working hard to recover regarding his health issue. So just wanted to leave you all with something, a story, a couple of things actually. A story that Ronald Reagan had said. It's kind of ironic in a way, but he had received a letter just before he had left office from a man. He didn't know why he chose to write the letter, but he was really glad that he did. He wrote that, you can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go live in Germany or Italy, but you can't become a German or an Italian. But he followed his pathway and he went through Turkey and Greece and Japan and other countries. But he said anyone from any corner of the world can come to live in the United States and become an American. And I think that's what you all are going to be working the week that you'll be fielding calls. The importance of people, why they want to come to this country. George Washington said it in a lot of his messages as one of the founding fathers, that you come here, people come here leaving persecution, they come here for opportunity, but we have to accept people from all races and religions. And I think it's really honorable that you all volunteered to do this, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I like to say, and some of you have heard me say it before, that CUNY is the most immigrant-friendly university in the country. I know something about that because I've worked in immigration issues around the country, and I've taught in other cities, so I know what I speak. And CUNY truly is the nation's most immigrant-friendly university. It's also located in the country's most immigrant-friendly city. And I can tell you that's accurate also, having worked in many other cities, particularly Los Angeles. When I tell people in Los Angeles, my many friends there, because I spent a lot of time there, went to law school there, about all the great things New York City does for its immigrants on a gubernatorial level, on a governmental level, people are amazed. I mean, when they hear about what CUNY does on a university level, people are amazed. Part of what makes New York immigrant-friendly is the outstanding work of the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs. There's nowhere in the country that has a city administration that has done more for its immigrant constituents. In LA, again, I keep talking about LA, I go out there a lot. They just set up a mayor's office, a similar thing, a Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs. I went on the website for direct, because one of my friends knows the person who's the commissioner and says, can you help her out? And I go to the website and I wrote back, I said, poor thing, she's got 3 or 4 people working for her. You can't do the kinds of things you need to do. You can't do the kinds of things you need to do with the kind of staff that they have there. It's much different in New York. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce from the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs, Bita Mostofi, who's Assistant Commissioner, to speak on the Commissioner's behalf.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan, very much. Thank you to the Daily News and to CUNY for this wonderful opportunity to speak before you, and also just this incredible program, Citizenship Now. I'm coming from the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. We truly believe in what you're here doing. We believe that our mission truly is to make New York City a city that's more inclusive for everyone, for all our immigrant communities, to expand access to justice for everyone, which is a key component of what this is all about, and obviously what John Jay is all about. So we're in the right setting with the right host to do that. And to amplify this work nationally, to make sure that what we do here in New York City, be it the city, be it partners like CUNY or the Daily News, individuals who are civically participating like you, that all of that is amplified nationally to make a case and advocate that immigrants truly are the fabric of what make our cities and localities great. In New York City, 40%, nearly 40% of our city's population are foreign-born. If you add in the children of those individuals, you get 60%. So when we say it is your friends, it is your families, it is your neighbors or your colleagues, we are quite literally meaning that to be true. So this isn't about just what is best for an individual or for a family member. It's truly about what is best for New York and what is best for all of New York City. Immigrants are just under half of the workforce and just over half of small business owners. They're major drivers of our core economic sectors, from finance to technology, medicine, and entertainment. They're communities that pay over $10 billion in property and income taxes a year. I've had the pleasure of representing immigrants through nonprofit work for over 10 years. And everybody that kind of comes to your office or that you interact with, they're coming for a different reason, right? Whether it's to seek a better life or livelihood for themselves and their families, whether it's to advance the gifts that they've been given in a career or an opportunity that they dream that they can realize, whether it's to give back to the community that has provided for them. How many of you in here are from an immigrant family or have had an immigrant experience yourself? Many of you, this is a clear example of what I mean. We are people, all New Yorkers, most of us from immigrant families or immigrants ourselves, who want to give back. That in and of itself is truly a story that must be sung loudly and widely for everyone to hear, because this is what this is about. It's civic participation, it's giving back, it's helping people realize an opportunity, giving people a chance, allowing people to have a better life if that's what they seek, giving them maybe an easier opportunity to find a job or care for their family or family members. In New York, we know we are facing a hard time, a challenging time for everyone as it relates to immigration, but we are steadfast. And part of our ability to do that is because of all of you. We know that we can fight to protect our communities, and we can resist anything that is an attempt to curtail who we are and what our values truly are, which is to be welcoming for everybody. And we do that because we stand with you, and we support the work that you're doing both here and in your own lives and in your own communities and your own families. And we'll continue to work together to ensure that everybody feels safe, everybody has the opportunity, and everybody is connected to services that they have the right to. So we hope that after today, you'll continue your volunteer work, that you will continue to be giving back. You can do that through our office if you're interested in doing that. You can do that through CUNY if you're interested in doing that. There are many ways, but I really hope that this is, for some of you, the beginning or the continuation of your own civic participation and your own opportunity to give back to, obviously, the communities that you are from and the communities that you are a part of. So thank you so much for what you're doing here.
So every year we honor an organization or individual who's made a particularly significant effort over the past year to do, who has done, or he or she has done two things: great service to Citizenship now, and great service to the immigrant community in general. And to introduce this year's award winners are Tamara Bloom, Citizenship Now Managing Attorney, and Zachary Schultz, Volunteer Engagement Coordinator. So Tamara and Zachary, please.
Hello and good morning again. we'd like to draw your attention to this beautiful picture, which was from a training that we did with Bloomberg over the past year. In 2016, the Bloomberg Legal Department teamed up with the Philanthropy and Engagement Department to launch a pro bono volunteer program specifically to lend legal expertise to underserved communities. And in its pilot year, Bloomberg Legal provided 1,400 hours of free legal services through a bunch of different organizations. And
Wow.
About 350 of those hours were just with CUNY Citizenship now. As some of you might know, when Mike Bloomberg was mayor, he actually helped develop the volunteer corps, and our partnership with Bloomberg Legal is a continuation of that legacy, and it serves as a model for other companies.
And in addition to David and Valerie from the legal department, Citizenship now also wants to thank Nanette Smith, head of global philanthropy and engagement at Bloomberg LP, and her staff, as well as Mata Kanjar, who by day is a busy attorney in the legal department and who moonlights as Bloomberg's volunteer coordinator for Citizenship Now. Thank you, Mata. Thank you for all your hard work over the last year, bringing our two organizations together. And thank you to the legal department staff who have generously volunteered all of your time.
Could the Bloomberg legal staff who are in the audience, or the Bloomberg staff in general, please stand up for 1 second so we can all give you a round of applause. And now we'd like to introduce David Levine, who's the general counsel, and Valerie Borden-Farkas, who's a senior counsel and the chair of the pro bono committee, to accept the award on Bloomberg's behalf.
I'm going to drop it, so much safer hands than mine. Thank you. Like to thank Tamara, Zach, and Alan, and the entire CUNY team. Like to thank the Daily News for your support of this important program, and also for being a member of the Free and Independent Press. As we are. Like to thank John Jay for hosting the event today and for all the work they do on social justice issues. Alan, when he opened, talked about his sort of hope and reason for optimism. I may not be quite as optimistic as you are, but if there is reason for optimism when you look at sort of a partnership between the government here in New York City, the private sector with organizations like ours, news organizations, and academic institutions, I think if we all work together, there is reason for optimism. And so I would like to thank John Jay, I'd like to thank the Daily News, New York City, for their support and for working and partnering so closely with us. As alluded to in the introduction, our pro bono program is actually quite young. While Bloomberg as an organization has been performing philanthropic work in the communities for many years, our pro bono program was formally launched in April of 2016 under the leadership of our founding program chair, Valerie Farkas. Not an easy thing to do, as we discovered, a lot of work to actually launch a program. We're very fortunate to have had a great deal of support, including from partners like CUNY, to allow us to make an impact very quickly. In the first year of our program, and this, for these purposes, will be 12 months, not 2016, more than 80% of our New York colleagues volunteered in one or more pro bono program contributing over 2,000 hours of service, including the 350 alluded to with CUNY, but also, in addition to assisting immigrants, working on behalf of disabled veterans, micro-entrepreneurs, victims of domestic violence, transgender youth, and prison inmates. And a lot of this work, I mean, we're here today on a weekday, a lot of this work is actually done in the evening and on weekends when people are making a sacrifice of their personal time, not just during the day. Today's event obviously is during the day, so we're not getting a lot of work done back in the office, but most of the time is actually contributed on evenings and weekends. And I'm really proud of the meaningful impact our team has made and will continue to make on the lives of underserved New Yorkers in really such a short period of time. More than 40 members of our department have participated in the CUNY application assistance events. Mata Kanjar is our program coordinator for CUNY. He's done a terrific job in organizing and motivating. But all of us have different reasons for participating. My wife is an immigrant to this country. 3 of my 4 grandparents immigrated to New York City, all escaping persecution. For me, it's a very personal cause, as it is for virtually everybody. And if you look at New York City in particular, the immigrant story here is so powerful. Personally, for me, I've done a handful of CUNY events. I would count them among the most meaningful experiences I have had in my professional career. Very rarely are you able to meaningfully help an individual on the spot. They're so enthusiastic. They want to be citizens. They don't take it for granted. To be able to work personally with somebody and help them on the pathway to citizenship and feel how proud they are to be going through the process is really a very touching and meaningful event. And certainly the feedback that I've received from our staff who have participated echo that. While helping others is the cause behind our pro bono program, the program has done more than help the community. It has provided additional meaning to colleagues, enhanced camaraderie in our group, and has provided numerous leadership opportunities for colleagues. We've obviously had a lot of support within our organization, and we're really fortunate to have a strong organizational connection to philanthropy and giving back. Our owner is simply incredible, really, if not the greatest, one of the greatest philanthropists of our time, and that is in our DNA for everybody who works at Bloomberg, not just the people who work at the foundation, but all employees of Bloomberg LP globally. As you've seen in the photograph, Mike actually addressed colleagues and CUNY volunteers at an evening training session this past fall, which was very inspirational to our team. We have a terrific partnership with philanthropy. I'd like to recognize here today Nanette Smith, who very briefly, and for those of you who don't know Nanette, probably has more energy than any human being I've ever met, and you're truly infectious. The partnership has really been instrumental in the success of our program. Pro bono service is a critical component of the legal profession, and now more than ever, it is important for us as lawyers. We are uniquely qualified to help on issues of social justice, and this is a critical juncture for us. We can't take it for granted. We need to use our special skills and our work ethic to help individuals who really do need our assistance. So I'd like to strongly encourage in-house legal departments to develop and nourish pro bono programs. This work helps strengthen our legal teams and our profession and really importantly our community. And I do firmly believe that those of us in leadership roles have an obligation not only to offer words of encouragement, which actually are pretty easy to do, or money, which is less easy to do but still doable. We need to set an example by actually doing and participating. by participating in the call-in programs, by going to the events, and by showing our support for these programs and these communities. So our story really is a reminder to everyone that it is possible to make a real difference, even in a relatively short period of time. Again, I'd like to thank CUNY and the volunteers, who make this happen. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Valerie Farkas, who is our pro bono chair, really an incredible leader with tireless energy and passion for helping others, who's been critical and instrumental to the success of our program. Valerie.
I'm going to safely put this back in the phone box. Thank you, David, so much. I appreciate the remarks. As many of you know, the success of any pro bono program or program of any kind really hinges on the leader of that program and the example that he or she sets. And David doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. He has been there on Saturdays at CUNY events. He's been there at evening trainings. He has really been there from day one as the biggest advocate of our program. And for the rest of our department to see his presence, not just his words encouraging them to do pro bono, but to see his presence at those events has been a critical element to the success of our program. So this award is very much a testament to your unwavering support as much as it is all of the hours and commitment from our volunteers. So thank you, David. So we first learned about the CUNY Citizenship Now program back in 2015. We were in early planning mode, in all honesty, trying to figure out, hey, we want to do pro bono, but where do we start? Who do we turn to? Our key partner, as David mentioned, was Nanette Smith and her amazing team in the Bloomberg Philanthropy and Engagement Group. And it was through Nanette that we met Alan and Tamara and the entire CUNY team back in those very early days of our pro bono program's infancy. And as soon as we learned about CUNY Citizenship Now, we instantly knew that these application assistance events were going to really resonate with our volunteers, that they were just going to be a perfect fit for our program. So we actually selected the big citywide annual event last May. We decided to just, go big from the starting gate. And with Tamara's help, coordinated, I think it was upwards of about 20 of our volunteers. That served as our signature inaugural Bloomberg Pro Bono event, and it was a great success. But honestly, we never anticipated how quickly this wonderful partnership with CUNY was about to develop, as well as how deeply our volunteers were going to engage. So it's been a true delight to see. And for that, I thank Alan and Tamara and Zach and the entire CUNY team. Your incredible dedication, your amazing level of organizational skills that are peerless. You just make it so easy for our volunteers to engage and to give back. We felt incredibly prepared after the various trainings, this included, which was a really great on-site training that our founder was able to attend. And the application assistance events themselves, truly well-oiled machines, and I expect the same from the call-in week because you never disappoint in that regard. And no doubt that's why your volunteers continue to come back time and again. So thank you. I must reiterate the thanks that David offered to Nanette Smith and her colleague Allison Rogg, who's here with us today as well, and the entire philanthropy team. I don't know that we could have gotten this off the ground without your help, your support, your advocacy, your network. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your encouragement. And I know that thanks has gone its way to Matta Kanjar, but I have to do that as well, so please bear with me. Matta is a member of a founding member of our pro bono committee at Bloomberg. We banded together about 8 of us to try to figure out how to make this happen back in the early days of 2015.
And Matta's work serving as our CUNY project lead has been so instrumental and really just such a key component of our team. I know I speak on behalf of David, and he did mention it as well. All of our volunteers, those in this room, those through the live stream, those who've done events in the past, as well as the CUNY team, that your countless hours behind the scenes, as well as all of the hours at the CUNY events. I'm fairly certain you are the leaderboard on a number of CUNY events attended. So very much appreciated. So, Matta, if you don't mind, would you please stand briefly so that we can all acknowledge you? Thank you. And finally, thank you to our volunteers. The generosity that you have given your time, particularly on weekends, you're making a difference in the lives of so many New Yorkers. At a time when the rights of immigrants are under threat, programs like CUNY Citizenship Now are critical for helping us to counter the politics of fear and xenophobia. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be a part of these efforts. And a final happy 20th anniversary to CUNY Citizenship Now. Thank you.
Be careful.
I know.
It's heavy. And a special thank you to Tamara and Zach for the terrific work they've done. She's saying, why me? Why me? Because we all know that they're the key to the contribution that you have all made. Finally, and for me, this has always been the most important part of our program over the last few years, and that's where we get a chance to introduce you to some of the people who, because of your work, have achieved immigration status that they may not have achieved without your help. And to introduce them, we have Sofia Carreño, who's Citizenship Now's Communication College Relations Specialist. Sofia.
Good morning, everyone. As many have mentioned already, this is a very special year for us here at Citizenship Now. It's our 20th anniversary, and we are celebrating our 15th annual call-in. And I'm very glad to see many familiar faces and new ones joining us today. This segment of the training is about the stories of callers that you have helped. And today, 3 individuals who received citizenship thanks to you, to your efforts, are joining us. Ofelia Santa Maria is a Mexican-born U.S. citizen who was referred to our CUNY Immigration Center at Medgar Evers College. And she applied for citizenship for free. Guillermo Beriguete, his son Roberto from Dominican Republic, and his wife, Guillermo's wife, Ludovina, who could not make it today, they also applied for citizenship, and they did it together as a family. And Elsa Amaya from El Salvador followed the steps of her sister, who had become a U.S. citizen and came to one of our events for help. Their motivations to apply for citizenship were all different. Let's hear about them, from themselves. So let's start with Ophelia, please.
Good morning, everyone. I want to apply for citizenship because as citizen, you have the right to vote in federal election and to feel safer. When I saw the news in Univision 41 about how you can apply for citizenship, I did not hesitate, and I called the number that appeared on the screen. When I called, they gave me all the information I needed and made an appointment with a lawyer to help me fill out my application. She made a packet with all the documents that I needed to send the Immigration Center without any cost. Therefore, I want to say thank you to all the volunteers and lawyers of Citizenship Now for donating their time to help people like me. Now, as a citizen of the United States, I exhort all those people who have 5 years or more as permanent residents to apply for citizenship now. Don't let time pass.
Okay, now we are going to hear from Guillermo. Guillermo, please.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Sophia. Good morning, everybody. I'm here today to share some story about myself and my family. My name is Guillermo Beriguet. I am 53 years old, married, and I have a 25 years old son, Roberto Pavel, who came with me. My wife is working today. My father, we came to the United States in June 18, 2010 from the Dominican Republic. Thank you. My father sponsored us for our green cards. He was citizen of the United States. At the beginning, things were very difficult. I didn't speak English and could not find a job. But my family and I talked and decided to go to an ESL program and start learning basic English. Later, I got a job and driver's license too. While I was recovering from low back surgery, my wife and I thought of doing something important to contribute to the United States and to ourselves. We decided to apply for citizenship. We were watching 41 a tu lado in Univision. We learned about CUNY event. My wife called and made an appointment, and we received the help that we needed from the volunteers and staffs at John Jay College. We became citizens in August 23, 2016. My wife and I voted for the presidential election. We are very grateful to you. This is a difficult time for all immigrants, and we want to encourage permanent residents to become citizens. Thanks to CUNY, Univision, New York Daily News, and all the volunteers of us. Thank you very much.
Bueno, the next is Elsa Amaya. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Elsa Amaya, and I am one of the people who called the CUNY Daily News Citizenship Now Fund Bank last year and got benefited. First of all, I would like to thank everyone here, volunteers and sponsors. It is a pleasure to have you here today, getting ready to help other immigrants like me. My story begins in El Salvador, a country that is 5 hours away from the U.S. by plane. When I was only 5, my parents migrated to the U.S., and I was left behind with an amazing woman, my grandma, a person who is part of what I am today, very strong and independent. She helped me face many hardships, like growing up without my parents, who missed my childhood. After 7 years, I migrated to the U.S. for a better life and better opportunities, having to leave her and my loved ones behind. But I was still happy. I had about 7 years without seeing my mom, a woman who plays the most important role in my life, a woman that fights battles for my happiness. After being a U.S. resident for more than 5 years and turning 18, I wanted to become a citizen, knowing that big things were approaching me. I was going to attend the New York City College of Technology soon, and one of my biggest dreams was to study abroad. My mother knew how much I really wanted to become a citizen, to travel, and because I wanted to vote. However, because of money circumstances, I couldn't afford to pay for the application. One day, watching Univision, my mom saw a number to call Citizenship Now to get help to become a citizen, and so I called. I received all the help at an event here at John Jay College. I was able to apply for the citizenship and get a fee waiver. I can proudly say now that I am a U.S. citizenship. And my next steps are to go back to visit my grandma and to accomplish my dreams and goals with God always in my heart. And with the purpose of being a better person than the one that I was yesterday. Once again, thank you all so much for your attention and help. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Robert, could you join us here? We would like to take a photo together. Do you have a little gift for everybody?
Can't take pictures outside. We do photos outside. Well, we can do quick. All right, great. Well, then we'll do some more photos outside. So before we go on to the substantive part of our program, I just want to do a special thank you to Ebony Mason. Ebony Mason. Ebony is the person who manages our events, including the training today, our community events that many of you have participated in, the call-in that's coming. She has a terrific staff. She's totally committed. She's totally dedicated. And she does an outstanding job. And when we hired her, I said to her, one of your big jobs is to make sure that I can sleep at night and not have to worry about things. And she's done a terrific job of that. So I just wanted you to introduce her.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I just wanted to let you all know that this call-in is very important to the immigrants of New York, and you're going to do a great job. And so thank you for coming.
Good morning again. We're about to get into the section of the program where we roll up our sleeves and learn and listen together. I'm Tamara. I'm the moderator for today. I'm also the managing attorney for Citizenship Now's community events, which means my job is to make sure you guys have everything that you need in terms of materials, in terms of resources, to listen to the feedback that you all provide about what works and what doesn't work, and to make sure that for a week as important as the call-in, that you have everything you need at your fingertips. The first thing that I want everybody to do is to take out your cell phone. If you have a phone, a smartphone, take it out for me. And please make sure that it is off and that your ringer is silenced. Don't be that person. And watch, that person will end up being me. Okay, everybody's good? The next thing I want you guys to do is take out your paddles. Look in the white bag that you guys should have received when you signed in this morning, and take out the paddles, which probably by this point look very familiar. And if you've been to a call-in before, please raise your thumb side paddle, higher, I can't really see. If this is your first time, raise the red paddle. Whoa, and if you've been to 5 or more call-ins, both, put both in the air right now. Wow, there's about 5 of you, awesome. Thank you again for being here. This is a cheesy segue into looking into your bags and looking at the materials that we provided you guys today. So in addition to the paddles, which Ebony Mason will kill me if you leave with these paddles are just for today. We need them again for the call-in and for our events. Don't go home with them. Jennifer will beat you with them if you try to leave with them. But also the rest of the items in your folder and in your materials are yours to keep. So this book here, the training manual, is going to be your most utilized resource for this week. Some of you who've attended more than 1 or 2 call-ins may notice that it's getting smaller and smaller. We've done our best to try to put as many resources together online as we can so that everybody knows how to direct callers so that they can look at those resources on their own, and so that we can show you where the most reliable, up-to-date information is kept. The presenters are going to refer to this throughout the day, as well as you should all have a copy of the PowerPoint. You should also have a copy of the volunteer guidelines. These are our rules and roles and responsibilities for the week. In times like these, when many of the issues we're going to be talking about are very highly politicized, we want to just make sure that everybody is aware of our code of conduct and understands, which you'll have explained to you more later, how important the rules that we've set up are to protect you guys and to protect us and to make sure that the people we are speaking to receive the most accurate, up-to-date information. Misinformation is at an all-time high. Fear is at an all-time high. You hear rumors of ICE raids. You hear, okay, if you need a PowerPoint, you can see Jennifer. Raise your hand and Jennifer will come to you with it. Misinformation, like I said, is at an all-time high. Rumors spread over social media. And the idea this year is to give you the most accurate, up-to-date information to help people dispel myths, to answer people's questions that they may be otherwise embarrassed to ask, and to just be a friendly voice over the phone to people who may feel very isolated and may have a lot of questions. You'll also have a program and a full and complete list of our esteemed presenters and panelists' biographies. We've tried to bring together some of our most knowledgeable staff and some people from the immigration advocates community who, through their tireless efforts, have made real-time changes in New York City, and their efforts have caused a ripple effect throughout the country. So I'm going to get started with introducing our very first presenter. I want to remind everyone in the audience that also in your bags you should have some of these red cards. And you should also have blank index cards. If you have a question during any of the presenters' sections today, please write it down. We're going to hold all questions until a special question and answer session where they can answer your question. Please don't be shy about asking questions. If you have that question, many others in the audience do too. For those who are watching from the audience out in internet land, you can ask us questions also by going to our Facebook page, Citizenship Now, or tweeting us at CUNY Citizenship. And our social media hashtags for the week are Citizenship Now and Immigrants Matter. So we look forward to connecting with you today and throughout the call-in week over social media as well as in person. And so keep out your paddles, because instead of eye clickers, which we've used in the past, we're going to be seeing if you guys are paying attention by asking you some questions throughout the presentations, and you're going to use your paddle to answer the question. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Camille Mackler, who is the Director of Legal Initiatives at the New York Immigration Coalition. Not only is she a longtime friend of CUNY Citizenship Now, but most recently she's been honored with a pro bono award for her work with the No Ban JFK movement. So welcome to Camille, and thank you very much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes. Can you hear me if I speak like this? Yes. All the way in the back, can you hear me? Yes. All right. I'm just going to try to shout, and if I start speaking too fast, Tom's going to remind me to slow down and breathe. But if I get really excited about immigration law. It's a little embarrassing and bizarre. But if I start losing all of you, please, please, please stop me. So you all have your paddles. You're all ready. There's going to be some poll questions. I didn't record. Oh, okay. There's going to be, sorry, I'm not very good at technology either. There's going to be some poll questions, so please remember that the Facebook no corporate sponsors here. The like button is A or yes, and the stop sign is B or no. For my purposes, we're just going to go with A and B. So thumbs up is A, big red sign is B. All right? You ready? Yes. To learn about immigration law, the most fascinating topic in the world right now? Yeah, all right. So the first thing you need to know about immigration law is that there's no way you're going to learn everything about immigration law today. I've been doing this for almost 15 years. I still don't know a lot about immigration law. And that's important to remember, because sometimes when you answer those phones, you're going to get questions that you can't answer. And the folks at CUNY have done an amazing job of doing this training for you today, but also putting together like the most amazing resource in that guide that you get. And there's going to be a lot of information in there, but it's just never going to be enough to fully answer a question. And so it's important to remember from the beginning that sometimes the best thing you can do to help someone is to get them to the person who has the specific knowledge they need. Sometimes it's not you, and that's okay. And I just want to say that because I know how easy or how much you want when you want to help someone and they're on the phone, they're like, please, I just need to know this. Please, I just need to know this. To want to give them something that's going to make them feel better, but sometimes the best thing you can do is, and this is so true in immigration law, is get them to the person they need, and your whole training manual is going to explain to you how to do that. But don't feel bad if that's the answer you're giving over and over again. You're doing them a tremendous service by connecting them to somebody who can actually help them, because all too often immigrants end up going to somebody who's trying to harm them instead. So remember that you're helping them out this way. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the immigration terms and the different kind of immigration statuses that exist out there. Again, a very high-level general overview of all of this, so that everything else you learn during the course of today and all the questions you get during the course of your volunteer shifts will make more sense. I just want to sort of paint the big picture for you, sort of establish the frame that you're going to be moving forward. We'll review some of the things that are covered in your training manual that you will have with you when you're answering the phones or volunteering at the call-in, and then just basically try to help you provide information to callers. But remember, you cannot give legal advice unless you are a lawyer or accredited representative by the Department of Justice, and if you don't know what that is, then you're not one of them. You can't give legal advice. And I know that sometimes it's really tempting to answer a simple question, but look at it this way. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for a long time, which tells you, if nothing else, that I spent a lot of time sitting in classrooms going to school. If somebody broke their car and brought it to me, I could probably go to Amazon and buy How to Fix a Car for Dummies and try to fix that car because, you know, I've had a certain amount of education and I've read books and I've, you know, keep up with the world and I can understand a book when it's written, but should you get in that car? No. Right? And if you come to me and you say you have a sore throat and I say, just take Advil, cold, and sinus, should you do that and not see a doctor? No. Same thing with immigration law, because sometimes something that seems so not a big deal is a really big deal in immigration. And only an experienced person will know that and recognize that. So again, the best help you can do for someone is getting them to the person who can truly help them. And you doing that is phenomenal. Too many times immigrants are victims of people who don't want to do that. So you doing that in and of itself is tremendous. So you can give information, but do not give advice. Do not say, it sounds like you qualify for citizenship. You're not a lawyer, you're not an accredited rep, you don't know that. Don't say, it sounds like you may be able to get your sibling a green card. That's legal advice. Say, I know somebody who can help you figure out if you can get a citizenship or if you can help your brother or sister get a green card. That would be information. So we'll cover that a little bit more. And I'm gonna hold on questions because after the next presentation, there will be a whole period where you can ask questions of me and of some of the other presenters. So why is immigration status important? Let's start with the really basic, right? We know, because we've all read in the news, that we have about 11 million individuals, 11 to 12 million, that live in the country undocumented, meaning they don't have immigration status. And having immigration status, first and foremost, is something that helps prevent deportation. So not having status makes you vulnerable to deportation, which means you're vulnerable if you're found by immigration authorities of being kicked out of the country. And that can be very dramatic, especially for individuals who may have lived here 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and built a whole life here, but never were able to obtain immigration status, and now they're at risk of losing all of that and having to go back to a country they haven't been to in 2 decades, where they have no family, no life, no connections. Immigration status is also the only way, other than being a U.S. citizen, that you can work in the United States, that you can have permission to work in the United States, which means that you are protected in the employment that you get. You can petition for family members in certain instances if you have immigration status in the United States. You can get a social security number and conversely tap in sometimes to social security benefits and other public benefits that may be eligible to you if you have immigration status, but that would not be available to you if you don't. And a big one right now is, and always, is you have the right to vote. And remember that only a U.S. citizen can vote, and that's very important. And there's a reason why that's so highlighted on that screen. Because if you vote and you're not a U.S. citizen, and you vote, and this applies to any election in New York, if you vote, you're not a U.S. citizen, you can be deported simply for having voted, or you can be barred, and you can be barred from ever receiving any status, immigration status in the United States, if you've ever voted and you are not a U.S. citizen. So it's really, really, really important. And as you're going to be talking to people who, by virtue of the fact that they're calling, are likely interested in obtaining citizenship, they're going to also want to be able to vote. And it's important to remind them that until they have that certificate, they've taken the oath and they have their certificate that says you are now a U.S. citizen, they cannot and should not vote. It is extremely dangerous to do so otherwise. What do we look at when we're trying to determine if someone is eligible for any kind of immigration status? The first thing that's the most important is their history. How long have they been in the United States? Are they how long has their family been in the United States? Do they have family member in the United States? Is this their first time in the United States? Were they here and then they left? If so, what were the circumstances of that departure and that return? Have they ever filed any application? Whenever you file an application for immigration benefits, it goes, the US government, this is not gonna shock anyone, is basically stuck in probably about 1998 right now. So we're not talking about electronic files. We're talking about like big stacks of papers, super efficient, killing a lot of trees. But when you apply for an immigration benefit, whoever's gonna make the decision on your application, they're gonna get that file, that literally that physical file. It's gonna travel around the country until it gets to the office it needs to get. And they're going to see every single application you've ever filed before then. So knowing what's been filed before, whether you actually qualified for it, whether you filed it yourself or somebody filed it for you, whether you were aware of the contents of it or not is very, very, very important. We need to know, has somebody ever interacted with any other immigration agency? And here's where things get tricky when you're talking to someone, right? Is that me as the immigration lawyer, I have a checklist of questions. I'm like, have you ever spoken to an immigration official? It seems like the most clear-cut answer in the world. But to the person who came 20 years ago crossing the river and spoke to someone who then waved them in, had them sign, filled out some papers, had them, you know, go on in, they don't know. Yeah, I talked to someone, I think, I showed them something, I told them, I don't remember. The person I was traveling with did all the talking. I don't know what happened. Well, that's important because maybe they talked to a park ranger that just happened to be there, or maybe they talked to an immigration official who ordered them deported and then said, you know, move along, thinking they were going to go back in one direction, and they just kept going into the United States instead. These things are very, very important for two reasons. One, they determine your eligibility for current and future benefits, but two, they also determine the risk factor for that person now being that person's presence now being alerted to immigration authorities. So it's very important to get a complete and as full and as accurate of a picture as you can. A lot of times you'll have somebody who's like, I have some questions for my brother, my mother, my neighbor. You know, can you just answer them? Saying, no, I need to talk to the person, unless there's a really good reason why I can't. They're a small child. They don't speak a language that I don't have the ability to provide interpretation for right now. Unless that's the case, you have to speak to the person directly because they're the only ones who are going to know their history in sufficient detail to be able to answer the questions. By the same token, you'll get a lot of like, well, I'm in the exact same situation as my neighbor, and my neighbor was able to get a green card. Why am I all of a sudden maybe not able to get a green card? Nobody has exactly the same situation ever. And one little detail different can be the entire difference in a case. Both people came on the same flight at the airport. One used their passport, one used the passport of somebody who had a photo who looked like them. Everything else is different. They moved into the same apartment, got the same job, have been living the same life, basically identical twins for all intents and purposes in their life patterns. But that one tiny little difference makes a huge, huge difference. The other thing that's a really big no-no in immigration is criminal contact. Any interaction with law enforcement has to be a major red flag. And you have to ask that question many times usually. Were you ever arrested by the police? Have you ever spoken to a police officer? Have you ever been handcuffed? Have you ever been brought to a precinct? Has anyone other than immigration ever taken your fingerprints? For that matter, has immigration ever taken your fingerprints? You have to ask the question multiple ways. Have you ever been arrested? Not really, not for anything serious. There is no such thing as a non-serious crime in immigration. Things that somebody might get arrested for and then the charge got dismissed is a big deal, can be a big deal in immigration. A lot of times somebody, you know, it was a misunderstanding, I went to court, the judge told me I'll plead guilty to this and then I'll just be free to go, just keep myself out of trouble for a year and I'm good. Could turn out to be an aggravated assault with a sentence of 2 years in jail that just happens to be suspended. So you didn't actually spend a night in jail, but for immigration purposes, that's a really big deal. Any criminal contact, no matter how minor it may have seemed at the time, is going to have a consequence in immigration. So it's very, very important that people be very upfront about their immigration history, but also that if that comes up in a call that you get them to the right people to ask the right questions. So let's talk a little bit about the immigration agencies. I guess by show of hands, not paddles, how many people have heard INS? Yeah. How many people think INS still exists? Yeah. It doesn't exist anymore, all right? But everyone knows us to talk about INS, about the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which used to be the immigration agency that oversaw all immigration benefits, except now we have this sort of big Department of Homeland Security with all these different agencies, and functions have been sort of spread apart, sometimes brought together, sometimes spread apart. So in 2002, the Homeland Security Act was signed, and it created the Department of Homeland Security, and as part of the Department of Homeland Security, So the Department of Homeland Security was created in 2002, opened its doors in 2003. INS used to be the agency that oversaw all of immigration functions across the board. They oversaw adjudications of decisions on applications. They oversaw immigration court hearings, trying to figure out if somebody was going to be deported or not. They oversaw the customs, well actually no, not customs, I'm sorry, that was the Department of Treasury, but they oversaw the Border Patrol. All of that was part of INS. That was an agency that was part of the Department of Justice. In 2003, when the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, opened its doors, they moved a lot of functions of immigration out of the Department of Justice and into the Department of Homeland Security. And to carry forward that immigration work, they created 3 agencies. The first one is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS. We love acronyms in immigration law. So if somebody's using an acronym and you don't remember what it stands for, please, flag that, or it's all in your training manual in the first section, I think. So U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is a benefits agency. They make decisions on applications for immigration benefits. You want to apply for citizenship, it goes to USCIS. You want to apply for a green card, you want to apply for a work permit, you lost your green card, you need a new one. You want to apply for your child to get something, it all goes to USCIS. USCIS gets those applications and they make the decisions. Then you've got Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. ICE, within DHS but separate from USCIS, is the Immigration Enforcement Agency. They arrest, they investigate, they arrest, they detain, they deport. That's all done through the enforcement and removal operations part of ICE. They're the guys that you see walking around, that you hear all the rumors about, that will arrest somebody on the street and bring them in. They're also the ones who represent the government in deportation proceedings. So when the government is trying to deport someone, you go to immigration court, we'll get to that in a second, but the government has a lawyer, and that lawyer is part of ICE, and they're arguing the government's case for why this person should be deported. And then you have CBP, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. I didn't catch that mistake on this slide. It's U.S. Customs and Border Protection, of which Border Patrol is an agency that you hear a lot about, particularly if you live around land borders, like up above by Canada or down south in the country. But U.S. Customs and Border Protection is the overall agency that oversees what happens at our borders. And so they do that at ports of entries, which can be, the booths that you drive up to. If any of you have ever been, if you've ever crossed into Canada or Mexico, you will have gone through one of those booths where you present your immigration paperwork or your passport. They actually patrol the coasts to make sure that no one's trying to enter the country or smuggle in anything into the country by maritime routes. And they're at the airports. They, when you fly into the country, when you arrive at JFK, you first see a Customs and Border Protection agent. And then they have Border Patrol, and Border Patrol, as their name suggests, patrols the border between ports of entry. So between those booths, between these specific spots that have been designated as an entry point to the United States, Border Patrol patrols and tries to catch people who are trying to enter or smuggle goods or people into the United States, evading the ports of entry. So those are the 3 agencies within within the Homeland Security Department, or DHS. You'll often hear us call it DHS or the department or for those of us who were around back then, the service, because people still refer to it as INS or the service, but what they mean is DHS. One function that remained in the Department of Justice is the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR, the immigration courts. So when you're in the United States and they're trying to deport you, most people, not all, but most, will get a hearing before a judge one time. Not one hearing, but you get one case in front of an immigration judge. If you're ordered deported and you never leave and 20 years later you get caught, you don't get to go back in front of a judge. Then they're just going to take that first decision from 20 years ago and use that to deport you. But the first time, most people, not all again, but most people will get a hearing in front of an immigration judge. That's part of the Department of Justice. There's 56 immigration courts across the country. We have 2 in New York City, one that handles most New York cases, and a smaller one that's at Federal Plaza, and a smaller one on Varick Street that handles cases for immigrants that are detained by ICE. And then there's a appeals level court called the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is also part of the Department of Justice. And if you want to appeal the decision of the immigration court, you go to the BIA or the Board of Immigration Appeals. Remember that what's important about all of that is that immigration courts are administrative courts. They're not independent judicial courts the way if you wanted to sue someone, you would go to the New York Supreme Court and sue them. They're part of the Department of Justice. They're part of the executive branch of government. And last one is the Department of State, which helps administer applications that have been filed for someone when the beneficiary, when the person who's gonna actually obtain the status is still abroad. Because the Department of State handles consulates, and when you're applying for an immigration benefit and you don't live in the United States, you're gonna go to the consulate to process all your paperwork. The Department of State handles that, and they do have an office in the United States called the NVC, or the National Visa Center, that sort of helps gather all the information required on the United States side and then sends it to the appropriate consulate so that the person can go. So there's a lot of commonly used immigration terms. I just went over the agencies very, very fast, but section 1 of your training manual will cover a lot of terms, and so if somebody's using something, this is sort of your glossary. That's somewhere where you can refer to today or during the call-in to sort of see. And that also includes all of the different agencies that I went over a second ago, and gives you their website if you want to find out more about them, etc. So let's take a quick break to see if you actually followed everything I just said. Deferred action for childhood arrival. We haven't discussed what DACA is yet, but it's something that somebody who is brought here as a young person can apply for. It's a protection from deportation. We'll get more into it in a minute. But Rodney wants to apply for DACA, and he wants to know where to send his application. So if you think he's going to send it to USCIS, you're going to raise your A paddle or the little thumbs up sign, and if you think he's going to send it to EOIR, you're going to raise your red panel, or you were listening. Thanks, guys. The correct answer is A, USCIS. As the benefits agency, USCIS is going to receive that application, cash the check, and then make the decision on the case. And we'll talk about DACA more in about 30 seconds, I think, and you can also look in section 6 of your training manual for a lot more information on DACA. So let's talk a little bit about different statuses. Most common statuses is USC or US citizen, LPR, which stands for lawful permanent resident, or what you all know as a green card holder, asylee refugees, people who came here seeking for protection, TPS, which stands for temporary protected status, which is if you're from a country where the US government has determined they cannot return you to, the entire population of that country that resides in the United States will be able to apply for something called temporary protected status. It's a protection from deportation. A lot of different non-immigrant statuses, which are temporary statuses, like you're here as a tourist, you're here as a student, you're here on a temporary work visa. All of that is considered non-immigrant, because non-immigrant means you have a permanent intent to live in the United States. So that's a green card holder, a permanent resident. Anything else is non-permanent because it's not a green card, so we call them non-immigrant visas. DACA, we just went over, and then undocumented immigrants. As I said, about 11 million, give or take some, that currently reside in the United States. So let's talk a little bit about these different statuses. U.S. citizen. You can be born a U.S. citizen, right? If you're born in the United States, you automatically become a U.S. citizen. You can acquire U.S. citizenship by naturalizing, by going through the naturalization process, which is a big focus of the work that CUNY Citizenship now does and what this call-in is about in many ways. Naturalization is a process that you'll be learning more about in a few minutes, but you have to meet certain requirements and then you become a U.S. citizen. Your children, because you have to be 18 to apply for citizenship, any of your children, if they meet certain requirements, will what we call derive citizenship. So once the parent becomes a U.S. citizen, the children will become a U.S. citizen. That's one of two ways children of U.S. citizens can also acquire citizenship. The other one is if they're born abroad but to U.S. citizen parents, then they're also U.S. citizens at birth because of that lineage. LPRs, or legal permanent resident, or more commonly called green card holders, are those who have obtained permanent permission to remain in the United States. Now, when I say permanent, you're still subject to deportation. You can still be at risk of deportation if you commit a crime or if you meet certain other factors if you've got a green card. The only true way to protect yourself from deportation is citizenship. But green card holders can live here indefinitely. Once they've got the green card, their status is no longer based on how they got their green card. They've got their green card forever unless they trigger a ground that would make them deportable from the United States. There's different ways of getting a green card based on certain family relationships. Maybe sometimes certain employers for certain employees can petition for a green card. We have a lottery that's open once a year for individuals from countries that historically have low numbers of immigrants to the United States, and you can apply to try to get a green card through the lottery. And then some people who've come to the United States to seek protection, so asylum, a special immigrant juvenile status for children who are fleeing harm and can't be reunited with one or both parents, anybody who qualifies for help under the Violence Against Women's Act, which is a bit of a misnomer because men can also benefit under the VAWA immigration provisions, but VAWA can allow you to self-petition if you're being abused by someone who refuses to petition for a green card for you, and it also, if you're a victim of certain crimes, you may be able to get a U visa, which will lead to a green card through VAWA. So all of that is explained in much more details in sections 5 and 6 of the training manual. I think you have a bit of a overview of that this afternoon as well, but the bigger details of all these different statuses will be in 5 and 6. So what are some of these categories, I guess, that I just went over are right there. Reasons to apply, barriers to obtaining a green card, and the most important thing to know about a green card for these purposes is that there's no path to U.S. citizenship that doesn't go through a green card. So when we're talking about creating a path to citizenship for immigrants, it's not just about actually having them apply once they've got the green card, it's about getting them to the green card in the first place. If you ever enter the United States without permission, you're not going to be able to apply for a green card. Or it's going to be a lot harder for you to apply for a green card. If you have any period of time that you were in the United States that you didn't have immigration status, which we call unlawful presence, you won't be able to get a green card, or unless under certain circumstances, it'll be a lot trickier. If you worked without permission, same thing. Criminal activities, same thing. All of these can be bars to obtaining a green card, and for the majority of people will be bars to obtaining a green card. So you should definitely talk to somebody, if any of that applies, somebody that really knows what they're talking about to see if you qualify or not. Only 2 categories of individuals can petition for family members. The first one is U.S. citizens, and the second one is green card holders. U.S. citizens can petition for their parents as long as the U.S. citizen is 21 or older. They can petition for their spouses, although only one at a time. Not sure what that was added. I find one spouse plenty of trouble, but one at a time. Siblings. But again, you have to be 21 or older to be able to petition for your sibling, and your children, whether or not they're married. and whether or not they're over or under 21. All of those things that I just said, whether or not they're over or under 21, whether they're married or not, that's going to change the amount of time that it's going to take to get the green card. But if you're a U.S. citizen, you are going to be able to apply for all of these individuals. A green card holder can only apply for their spouse, again, only one at a time, and unmarried children of any age. So they cannot petition for married children, and they cannot petition for siblings. No other family category will qualify someone for a green card. Grandparents, grandchildren, cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, none of those family relationships matter. They don't allow you to apply for a green card. So different immigration statuses, like I was saying earlier, protection from persecution, victims of crime. Temporary protected status is a really big deal right now because, Haiti had been a TPS country since the earthquake in 2010. And the Department of Homeland Security just announced that they were only renewing it for 6 months till February, and they're not sure they're going to renew it any longer than that. A lot of countries have had TPS. Honduras, El Salvador have had TPS for close to 20 years, so that's been in the news a lot. And then, like I said, there's other sort of statuses that I won't get into, but you can find in your training manual. Quick overview of deferred action for childhood arrivals. Part 6 of your training manual was a program that was instituted by President Obama in 2012 in recognition that individuals who came here to the United States as children, again, had nothing to do with it, were now undocumented, but were graduating from school and were doing really big things here. They were going to be allowed to apply in a very uniform manner for protection from deportation and then to get a work permit. And that still exists. As of now, those applications still exist. It's still a possibility to apply for it. It's not a status because it wasn't created by law by Congress. It was something the president did, but the current President Obama did. The current president has not undone that yet. Anybody who's here undocumented, who what we call e-weed-in, entered without inspection, meaning they didn't present at a port of entry, they sort of came in between ports of entries and didn't present themselves to a customs official, or anybody who overstays their visa is undocumented, has no immigration status, and therefore won't be able to get to apply for citizenship, at least not right now. So last question I want to ask you, if Louis has had his green card since 1996 and he wants to apply to become a citizen, but he sort of mentions he's got a couple of criminal convictions, they're really no big deal, you really shouldn't worry about it. This is the guy you got on the other end of the phone. What are you going to do? Are you going to A, or thumbs up sign, tell him that his convictions, since his convictions are no big deal, shouldn't be a problem? Or B, or big red stop sign, tell him to how to get the certified copies of his, oh, okay, all right, you guys got it. You were right. All right, thank you everyone. I'm out of time, I think, and also out of slides. I'll be back in about 45 minutes to answer some questions, and thank you so much for doing this. It's so meaningful to our community.
Thank you, Camille. We're going to move on from the confusing world of immigration statuses and family relationships. Oftentimes, many of the questions you'll get over the phone are like, should I divorce my husband? He's the worst. And you'll say, well, for immigration purposes, or, let me raise my hand and get a therapist on the phone for you. We don't keep one of those on staff, unfortunately. We probably need to. The next subject we're going to delve into, many of you have a lot of experience with because you've served as volunteers at our application assistance events on the weekends. The volunteer corps, just as a statistic, has grown based on our naturalization work pre and post election. It's almost doubled. Before the election, we had about 2,000 plus volunteers, and after the election in January, the volunteer corps grew to about 4,000 people. And many of you are active volunteers, which means that about close to 400, 500 of you, even before the call-in, have come to at least one event in the past year. And this year is no exception. People are very hungry for information about how to help people become citizens. And to address our marquee subject matter is Luz Medrano, who's the supervising attorney at the Hostos Community College at CUNY Citizenship now. She's also a graduate of CUNY Law School. Big ups to CUNY, as usual. And a fun fact about Luz, we don't know the exact number of call-ins she's attended, but we think it's close to 13 or 14. She's been either as a volunteer or working with Citizenship Now, coming to call-ins since 2004. So here she is, Luz Medrano.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. And I know it's been a lot this morning, and I know it's before lunchtime, but we're going to try and stay awake. It's Citizenship and Naturalization, which most of you are familiar with. So hopefully we'll be able to get to some nitty-gritty. Yeah. So just an overview. We're going to talk about the process by which somebody becomes a citizen, talk about some issues that you might see when you're helping people on the phone or actually helping people if most of you are going to join us on the day of our big event. Common questions that we get from callers year after year, you know, like, can I take it in Spanish? You know, that is a super common question, to more intricate questions. And then how to use the training manual and how to like access that information. Oh yeah, and I work at the Hostos Immigration Center as part of CUNY Citizenship Now. We're open 5 days a week and offer free immigration services to CUNY students in the community at large. I've been doing this for 11 years now. So most of us who started off as volunteers have ended up as staff. So I think it's a testament to how we work with volunteers as well. Okay, so who can become a citizen? So obviously, if you're born here, you can become a citizen. That's almost everyone that's born here. Little known fact is that if you're the child of a diplomat, you're born a permanent resident. You're not born a citizen. But everyone else who's born here is a citizen. That's how I became a citizen. And then there's those of us that have to be citizens after birth. And so that's generally through an application process, naturalization, right? So we say citizenship when we're saying, oh, do you want to apply for citizenship? Really, they're applying for naturalization. Oh, sure. So moving along. What are the benefits of citizenship? There are many, and I think that this year more than ever shows it, is that people really want to participate in civic life. They want to be able to have their voice heard. I've definitely seen an uptick in applications, which is very odd. Normally, the year after, or time after the election, is a slow time for citizenship. And if citizenship becomes very unsexy and very like, who wants that? But now it's kind of very lucrative. Everyone wants to become a citizen. We're not sure why. Ever since the election, people are just really interested in participating in their democracy. And you know, I'm talking about people who, I had one student who came in on like May 18th, and she wasn't 18 until May 25th. And I was like, okay, you're early, good for you. We did hers. I had another gentleman who'd had his green card since 1965, and his wife finally prodded him, and he's like, yeah, I guess. So obviously, to be able to participate in our society, to get certain government jobs, you have to be a US citizen, right? To be a police officer in New York, you have to be a citizen, among other things. The ability to apply for relatives, right? To apply for married children, particularly, to apply for siblings. Those are privileges that are only given to US citizens. And then obviously to get maximum public benefits, there's limits to how much SSI somebody can get as a permanent resident, how much certain benefits they can get, even your own Social Security retirement, how much you can get if you retire abroad as a permanent resident or as a citizen. Okay. So the naturalization procedure, I love flow charts, and we have this super handy dandy one. So it's kind of simple. You make sure that you qualify, you complete the form, you take your fingerprints, you pass an interview, and you take an oath, and you're done. See? Easy peasy. That's all you gotta do. You attend your interview, the officer's super sweet because they had their coffee that morning. Not all the time, but this is generally how it's supposed to happen and how it does happen in most cases, right? So who's eligible to naturalize? So number one, you must be a lawful permanent resident. Camille talked about that, right? So if you don't have your green card, if you're not a permanent resident of the United States, you may not apply for citizenship. A lot of people might call you and say, yes, yes, I want to be a citizen. The first question you have to ask them, do you have your green card? Because many will just think that citizenship just comes without the green card first. They're really not aware of the process. You have to be at least 18 years old. We talked about that. So I did help this student. She was going to turn 18 in a week, so she could do it. But obviously, if you're 15, hold off, not yet. You have to establish residence, continuous residence and physical presence, and we're going to get deeper into these in a little bit. And they kind of morph into each other. You have to be a person of good moral character. Immigration loves ambiguous terms, and good moral character refers to several things. We're going to get into those. I see that number 4 here on the flow chart was you have to have lived at least for 3 months in the state where you're applying. And that's, most people have been here for that long amount of time, so that's something that we kind of have on the side. Not as one of the basic requirements. You need to speak, read, and write English. And no, not just know the test questions, right? And God may help you, but if you don't know how to have a conversation in English, there's only so much that's good, that your faith will take you. So this is a very important part of citizenship that we help at least at Hostos, I have a largely Spanish-speaking community there. That's one of the hurdles. It's like, okay, you have to practice. And I thought that the people who spoke this morning, I love their English. Their English was excellent. I was so proud of them because you could tell that they really tried, that there was real effort. And it takes great effort. You come from another country, you're not the youngest person, and trying to completely learn a totally new language, not the easiest thing. So props to them. You have to pass a test on US history and government. Unfortunately, they don't give this test to American citizens born here because there are studies that if American citizens had to take the test, they wouldn't pass. Overwhelmingly. I remember having an argument with one gentleman who fought with me that there were 51 states. And I was like, can you count the stars on the flag? Okay, and you also have to be willing to take an oath of allegiance. The oath of allegiance is actually on the last page of the citizenship application, and it has some fancy words, but it's basically, yes, US is my country. So, what's a lawful permanent resident? This is the old looking green card. I think there's a fancier one coming out. So this is a green card. That's a lawful permanent resident card. That's an alien resident card. All of those names is the same thing. They have the right to live and work here permanently. They are immigrants. They are not non-immigrants, meaning they have an intent to live here and stay here. They can be deported, and that is something that a lot of people are not aware of. It doesn't matter how long you've lived here. It doesn't matter how many U.S. citizen children you have. If you commit a crime or if you do something that makes you deportable, you are deportable as a permanent resident. They cannot take part in elections, either run for office or vote. And so that is one of the primary reasons why people become citizens. And then there are limits to how much time they can spend abroad. Normally, they can't be gone for more than 6 months at a time, or they need to request special permission. So let's get our paddles up. So we're gonna do, I don't remember whether I put, the first option is the thumbs up, the second option is the question mark, the red question mark. So, must Min Jun renew his green card in order to apply for naturalization? We haven't talked about this, but it's just, let's see what you guys think. Min Jun obtained his green card through his sister in 2005. He's never traveled outside the U.S. His green card expired in 2015 and never applied to renew it. He's otherwise eligible to apply for naturalization. So, must he renew his green card in order to apply for naturalization? Thumbs up or, okay. It's a little bit of a mix-up. So thumbs up is yes, because he can't prove he's a permanent resident if his card is expired. And the question mark is no, because he's still a permanent resident even with an expired green card. Okay, some of them changed, and it is question mark no, because even though your green card is expired, you continue to be a permanent resident. And the only exception to this is somebody with a 2-year green card. Somebody who's a conditional resident with a 2-year green card, meaning their green card expired only after 2 years, that person's status does expire. And so oftentimes what I ask people when they call me on the phone and they say, my green card is expired, can I apply? I say, well, do you have a 2-year or a 10-year green card? Right? 2-year to me signifies they're a conditional resident. 10-year, or the ones that don't expire, are the ones where that's a permanent resident, a lawful permanent resident, not a conditional resident. Okay, hopefully that didn't confuse everyone. Okay, so we're gonna talk about residence and physical presence. There are 3 separate and important concepts, but they kind of intermingle. So continuous residence, which means you can't have breaks of more than 6 months at a time. Physical presence, which relates to how much time you actually have to be in the U.S., which is half of the last 5 years. And abandonment of LPR status is what may happen if you travel for too long. So, the 5-year rule is that you have to be a permanent resident for 5 years in order to file for citizenship. Okay, so you have to have continuous residence in the U.S. for 5 years. You may apply early. You may apply 3 months early, so that's going to be at 4 years and 9 months. There is a 3-year rule for those people who are married to U.S. citizens. They have to be married to and living with that U.S. citizen spouse for the 3 years preceding the application, and they also can file 90 days before. But that person does have to prove that they're in the valid marriage and they actually are living with their spouse. Okay? So we were living for 2 years and then we separated. Well, then you're not living together anymore. And immigration will require you to provide your taxes, showing that you've been filing your taxes married, filing jointly, or even married, filing separate, so long as it's married. And if you don't, then you're going to be denied. So that's a question that we tend to ask. I want to apply under the 3-year rule because I have my U.S. citizen spouse. Have you filed your taxes married? All right, continuous residence. So absences of more than 6 months but less than 1 year leads USCIS to presume that the permanent resident disrupted their continuous residence. Okay, so it's basically a break in their time here. When we're doing the citizenship application, we have to write down the trips that people have taken in the last 5 years. We used to have to write down all the trips they had ever taken, which was really fun with people who had been here since 1968 and traveled 3 times a year. Luckily, we don't have to do that anymore, but we do still have to look for these breaks. So if the person has more than 180 days, then we're asking them, well, what were you doing there? Did you end up working there? Did you file taxes here? Because all of these are factors that go to whether you abandoned your green card. Somebody who travels for more than a year and then enters the U.S., that person may have had permission. They requested a re-entry permit. They were gone for over a year. They come back and they say, now I have 5 years. Well, that 1 year, even though you had permission to be out of the country, does not mean that it counts towards your actual physical time here. So somebody who's gone for more than a year generally has to wait 4 years and 1 day to apply for citizenship after their return. Somebody who's broken their continuous residence, and this is going to sound weird, that if somebody takes a 6-month trip, they have to wait 5 years instead. And it really depends on the factors. So if somebody is gone for 6 months, we might recommend them, okay, apply 5 years after this 6-month trip. But again, we're going to be looking at certain factors as to whether they abandoned their green card. What does immigration look at when you abandon your green card? Did you file taxes here? Did you maintain a residence here? Is your family here? Did you work while you were over there? And the answers will depend on what immigration decides. So, as well as continuously residing here for the last 5 years, you have to be physically present for at least half of the 5 or 3 years, whichever one you're applying under, right? So if you're applying under the 5-year rule or the 3-year rule. You have to count the total number of days, and it's 24 hours or more, so trips of 24 hours or more. So actually, the day that you come in and the day that you leave don't count as days. And that matters when some people are very close to the limit. So normally in 5 years, if you are out more than 913 days in the last 5 years, then you should not apply, because then you had been gone for more than half of the last 5 years. There's some, if you do 365 times 5 and then divide that by 2. That's how I got to that number, okay? So, when can Bakary apply for naturalization? Bakary obtained his LPR status, lawful permanent resident status, through his daughter on April 16th, 2013. He visited his home country, Mali, from April 1st, 2014 through May 1st, 2015. Let's say he had a re-entry permit. Since then, he has not taken any trips outside the United States. So when can Bakary apply for naturalization? Is it going to be, should I go back? Here. So he got his green card April 16th, 2013, and his trip was from April 2014 to May 2015. Okay, so you guys have your dates down. And we're wondering, when can he apply for naturalization? Okay, we're listening. All right, that's correct. It's May 2nd, 2019. He took a year trip, and so he has to apply 4 years and 1 day after he returned. Okay? That was continuous residence. Woo! That was easy. Good moral character. So good moral character sounds like a lot of the rhetoric that we're hearing nowadays about values and all this. It's very important when you are preparing somebody for their naturalization interview that you let them know that good moral character isn't just about crimes. And I think a lot of people think that it's just about, oh, I don't have any crimes in my background, so I'm okay. But actually, good moral character includes other things. So it is looking back at the last 5 years. But if you have an offense before the last 5 years that's a particularly serious one, immigration can still take a look at it and decide based on that. So other categories of good moral character: child support. So whether you owe or pay child support is a big deal, big issue. Taxes, that you file your taxes, there's an obligation in the U.S. if you work that you file taxes, and good citizens are supposed to file their taxes. And so immigration wants to make sure that people have filed their taxes. And selective service, which is for men only right now. So criminal history is definitely one of the big parts of good moral character. Generally, parking tickets, disorderly conduct convictions, and fines, for tickets and things are not going to be a problem, but they do need to be disclosed. Disorderly conduct convictions need to be disclosed. Certain fines need to be disclosed. People are often, a ticket for being in the park after dark. Yes, that's a citation. The application says, have you ever been arrested, cited, detained? So a ticket is a citation. People often don't want to disclose them, and to me, it's more harmful to not disclose, because then you start in the whole lying category, misrepresenting, and why when it's just a ticket and you paid it and it's no big deal. It shows that you're a normal human being, that you wanted to be in the park after hours. I mean, some of these tickets are a little much. So certain crimes may be temporary bars to naturalization, and some may make you deportable. That's what we mean when we say removable. We use removable and deportable in the same way. So crimes involving moral turpitude, if you have a crime involving moral turpitude in the last 5 years, you should not apply. And those kind of, again, an ambiguous immigration term, but fraud, theft, and intent to deceive is usually involved in analyzing a CIMT. So somebody was accused of identity theft. Yeah, that's a CIMT because, you know, there's some intent to deceive or, you know. There are certain crimes that are permanent bars to naturalization, like aggravated felonies. We're not going in depth on crimes here today, which I think is a good thing because it does get a little overwhelming. And many things can be aggravated felonies, and it does not have to be a felony under the state to be considered an aggravated felony. And so that's the job that a lot of us do at the events. As the attorneys at the events, we have screening and we have checkout. And the reason why we have so many different people in place to check over an application is because these are serious things. People can be deported for some of these offenses, and we want to make sure that we're not sending anybody into deportation, right? But yeah, an aggravated felony can be anywhere from criminal sale of controlled substance, could be probably robbery in the first degree, could be any number of things that it's surprising. Most people are surprised when they realize, wow, this isn't what I thought would be considered an aggravated felony. And that's kind of like the death knell for anybody to get an aggravated felony. You're deportable. Most people with an aggravated felony cannot be readmitted to the U.S. once they're deported. You know, there are always exceptions in immigration law, but the general rule of thumb is that aggravated felony is, you know, the big scarlet letter. So, does Audrey qualify to naturalize? Audrey became a permanent resident in 2005. Over the next 10 years, she was arrested 7 times. Twice for petty larceny, shoplifting, and 5 times for possession of marijuana. She has 3 convictions for possession of marijuana, but only 1 for petty larceny. She also has 2 disorderly conduct convictions. She meets the other naturalization requirements. So does Audrey qualify to naturalize? Thumbs up, yes, when the convictions are over in 5 or 3 years, or question mark, these issues need a thorough review, which is not possible over the phone. Absolutely. You guys know it. I think these are too easy for you. But it's also before lunchtime. So yeah, actually even me seeing that, I can speculate what the answer is, but this needs a more thorough review. You've got to review what the convictions are for. You've got to review what's in the record of conviction. You've got to review what possible relief she might have if she is deportable. And all of those things cannot happen on the phone. You just cannot. And so we don't. And I think that is one of the things you have to prepare yourself for, is that sometimes you're not going to be able to give somebody a yes or no answer. You know, that question is a little too complicated, and we think that you should seek the advice of an expert. Do you need some numbers to call? I can give you some, you know. And whether they think that you're being helpful or not, we know that you are, right? And that's what matters. So what's really awesome is that we have tablets now, and we go on to immigrationlawhelp.org, and that's how we find a lot of the resources for people to call. And actually, I use that resource for anybody around the country. You just enter the zip code, and it gives you lists of organizations that do provide this assistance. All right. So, good moral character. That was it. That was crimes. But that is a lot of what we do at the immigration centers, is analyzing convictions and kind of figuring out whether someone can apply. So taxes. You're only required to file taxes if you've worked, if you have some kind of income, if the tax law requires you to. So a lot of people will come and say to me, oh, but I don't work. And I go, but how do you support yourself? And they go, oh, well, I babysit.
every once in a while. I go, how often do you babysit? Oh, every day. Oh, and how much do you make? Oh, I make, only 100 a week. I said, well, that counts as self-employed. You're self-employed. And if you're self-employed, you still have to file taxes. And the threshold is actually really low. Years ago, somebody told us the threshold was 400. Maybe it's a little higher now. But if you earn more than $400 for the year, you are required to file as self-employed. A lot of people don't understand this. And oftentimes, the question I get is, well, then I don't put that down. So don't put it down then. Don't put it down. And I've got to remind them, well, I'm a lawyer, and I know a lot of us are unscrupulous or whatever, but I'm an ethical attorney, and you told me the truth, and I have to write down the truth. And the truth is, you work. Because even when you go into immigration, I think a curious officer would be like, you've been here since 1980 and you never had not one job? Unbelievable. I think they will ask. I often ask people who I see have been long-term permanent residents, let's say since 1975, and they came at the age of 20, and they are on SSI, which means they didn't work enough to get their Social Security. And I go, but really, you came when you were 20? And they're like, I worked every day. I just never filed taxes. And so to me, as an attorney, as somebody who does pay my taxes, I'm always like, well, that's not fair, that ain't right. But I do tell them, well, look, if you have worked in the last 5 at the very least, you have to file. And an officer may ask you, and you have to disclose the truth. I worked for years and I never filed. And I think that would be a discretion issue. And I think that would be, dependent on the officer. All right. Selective service is men living in the U.S. between ages of 18 and 26 must register. This isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. So really the only people that get flagged for not registering for selective service are those young men who are applying between the ages of 26 and 31. So if you're a young man and you are 27 and you want to file for citizenship but you didn't register because you didn't feel like it, then yes, it would affect your application and you should not apply until after you reach 31 years. Why 31? Because when they look back 5 years, you're going to be past the requirement age. The requirement was until the end of 25. Does that make sense? You're looking at the last 5 years for citizenship always. So that gentleman, you just tell them, okay, you're going to apply after you're 31. And then it wouldn't be a major issue. For child support, immigration wants to make sure that if you have obligations, that you comply with those obligations. And so whether you're a man or a woman and you have children, they're abroad, let's say. And they go, but they're over there. I go, yeah, you still have children, you still have to support them. People are often surprised by this, that immigration would care about children that are even abroad, but it's about, again, good moral character and what kind of person are you, and are you a person that complies with their obligations? And when you have a kid, unfortunately, they're like right there, and you gotta provide. Immigration is concerned about that. I'll tell you quickly a story of a gentleman that I helped, a personal friend who had a daughter who was older. I think she was maybe 14 at the time, living with her mother in California, and he was here. He had another family here already. And the mother moved and didn't tell him. And so by the time he went to his citizenship interview, I think a few months had passed and she moved and she hadn't been in touch with him. So he hadn't been able to send money in those past 3 months, even though he had been sending money all throughout. And he was denied because he couldn't provide that proof. So that was something that wasn't his fault. That was something that, so it is something they look at. Again, I think it depends on the officer, because with immigration, it is very dependent on the officer. It's supposed to be uniform laws, but we know that if an officer hasn't had their coffee that morning, or if it's after lunch and they've got the itis, whatever, any kind of reason can kind of change what they're looking at. And voting, Camille touched on this, only US citizens can vote, so if you voted, that definitely goes against your good moral character, and it makes you deportable, and it's very serious, and it's something that this administration seems to want to say that a lot of people who are not eligible to vote have voted. Yeah, let's just move on. Okay, English language and US history and civics. So most applicants need to show basic proficiency, but again, they need to have a conversation in English, right? So when they sit down, they're being asked every single question in English. Besides having an entire conversation in English, they do have to answer 6 out of 10 of the citizenship questions correctly. They have to study from a list of 100 questions. And yes, even an 80-year-old woman who's had her green card for 5 years has to study from the list of 100 questions. There are exemptions for older, long-time permanent residents, and it's usually referred to as the 50-20, 55-15 rule. They both add up to 70. That's how I tend to remember it. So if you've had your green card for 20 years and you are 50 years old or older, then you qualify to take the test in your language. And if you are 55 years old and had your green card for 15 years or longer, then you also qualify to take it in your language. The interesting thing about this is even somebody who is illiterate, so let's say you speak English, so you're going to take the test in English. If you're illiterate and never learned how to read and write, well, if you've had your green card for long enough, all you have to do is answer the questions. You don't have to read and write. That's the whole point of this exemption, is that you don't have to read and write English. And so this exemption is something for foreign language speakers, but also for illiterate English speakers. And it works. It has worked. Okay. The next thing is the oath of allegiance. I have no idea what my time is, so, okay. Okay, oops, okay. Oath of allegiance, yay, must understand the obligations of the oath. You have to be willing to take it. There are certain exemptions for certain religions, or maybe conscientious objectors to the portion about are you willing to bear arms. There is a section on the oath that says, are you willing to bear arms? There are certain people, either because of their religious or moral convictions, don't want to, and so they have to explain that. Other people don't have to swear. They can just affirm that they are for this because they don't swear because of their religious convictions as well. Okay, that was it. That was naturalization. Because now we get to talk about derivation of citizenship. So naturalization is the process by which a permanent resident actively becomes a U.S. citizen of the U.S. And what we're going to start talking about now is permanent resident children who derive the citizenship through their parents' naturalization. So let's say I'm getting my citizenship, my naturalization, and I have a child who's 15 and they have their green card. When I become a citizen under these rules, that child automatically becomes a citizen. So this is a child born outside the U.S., this is a child with a green card, and this is your child, whoever is becoming the naturalized citizen. So derivation of citizenship, it kind of, poof, it happens. That's it. It's like the day that the parent becomes the citizen, if the child meets all the requirements, poof, the child becomes a citizen. Unfortunately, you can't just take that poof with you. You need proof, right? Not poof, not proof, no, proof, not poof. But, and it's just how we are living nowadays, is that it's not just going to be accepted, well, I became a citizen. No. So these children will either have to apply for a certificate of citizenship. Their certificate is actually one that says certificate of citizenship, not naturalization, or a passport. They can do either or. So under the current law, and this law came into play in 2001, so anyone who turned 18 after February 27, 2001, I think that's the date, would qualify under this. So they had to have been unmarried, they had to have been under 18, they had to have their green card, and they had to be residing in the U.S. in the legal and physical custody of a U.S. citizen parent. Okay? A lot of the cases that we try and do is this, or a lot of the people that we try to encourage to become citizens. Do you have children who are underage? It's extremely important you try to become a citizen, not only for you, but for them. They never have to go, children don't have to go through the fingerprint process, they don't have to take the test. It's a totally different procedure. And so they don't have to have good moral character, they don't have to have continuous residence, they don't have to have any of those things. They just have to have these. The law before 2001 was a little different. And so we have charts in the manual that have the different laws based on the time you were born and when all the qualifying events took place. So, like I said, it happens by operation of law. And it doesn't matter what happens first. So it doesn't matter if I became a citizen today, I petitioned my child, they entered the US as a permanent resident, 3 years after I became a citizen, but they were still under 18, that's fine. The day they entered the US, they became a citizen. Or I've been here for 12 years, the child is now 17, I became a citizen on the day they were 17 years, 11 months, and 29 days. Doesn't matter. They are now a citizen. Really, as long as you become a citizen the day before they turned 18, then they will get their citizenship. So for children born out of wedlock, the new law isn't as harsh as the old law was, but generally it takes a little more analysis of the case. And the reason is we still have these antiquated ideas about legitimation and in wedlock, out of wedlock. And so when it's a mom and you were born out of wedlock, yes, you will get your citizenship. When it's your dad who naturalized and you were born out of wedlock, there's a little more analysis that needs to take place. The child must have been legitimated. And that depends on the laws of the country that they're from or the laws here in the United States, in the state where they're from, or the state where they live. So, like I said, the law in effect at the time is when the last qualifying act is what controls. But really for the new law, which is the Child Citizenship Act, that is from February 27, 2001. So anyone who was born on February 28th, 1980, this is going to be math, 83? 83 would qualify under the new law, right? It's just what I do to make it easier for myself. But when you're speaking with people, trying to help them out, all of these factors are important. What's your date of birth? Not how old are you? What's your date of birth? What year did your parent become a citizen? What date? Because sometimes we're really down to the day. And then it's in Chart C in the call-in training manual under tab 3. And it's super tiny font, which I would need a magnifying glass for, but okay. So, did Altagracia derive U.S. citizenship? Altagracia was born in 2003 in the Dominican Republic. Her parents were never married to each other. Her mother entered the U.S. as a permanent resident on June 5, 2006 and petitioned Altagracia sometime after. Altagracia became a permanent resident on August 2, 2010 when she came to live in the U.S. with her mother. In 2012, her mother became a U.S. citizen. So did Altagracia derive U.S. citizenship? Yes, she derived in 2012 when her mom natsed. No, she didn't derive because she was not legitimate at birth. Okay, the answer is yes, she did when her mother naturalized. This one's a little easier because it was through the mom, and I said when it's out of wedlock and through the mom, it tends to be just kind of easy, like yes, yay, you get it. But it's just, analysis. What happened? When did it happen? Step by step by step. Making sure that all the qualifying events took place. Yes, under 18, yes. Green card, yes. So a lot of times at the citizenship events, people who aren't familiar will come up and say, I think this person got their citizenship, because they told me their parent is a citizen and their parent was a citizen before they were 18. And I look at the green card and they got their green card when they were 30. And I go, nope. You know, and I mean, it takes practice to kind of figure that out. But like, did they have their green card before they were 18? No. Doesn't matter that their parents are U.S. citizens. They didn't arrive. Easy as that. For acquisition of citizenship, that refers to somebody who was born abroad, but to U.S. citizen parents. So, John McCain, right? He was born in the Panama Canal Zone to like U.S. citizen parents. Some other people, I'm sure. So these people are not born technically in the United States, but they are born U.S. citizens. Okay, and you have certain residence requirements to show. The laws have changed over time. Right now, the law is if you've lived in the U.S. for 5 years before the birth of this child, 2 of which were after the age of 14. So if you only lived in the U.S., you know, between 1 and 10, you were 0, right? You were born here and then you left at the age of 10, and you have a child abroad at the age of 30, that child cannot acquire citizenship through you. Because the current law is 5 years of residence in the U.S., 2 of which are after the age of 14. And I think it's kind of intending to curtail the amount of people who come, have a kid, and leave, and then, you know, that transmission of citizenship that way. And those charts are also in the training manual. Okay. Again, you're always looking for whether the child was born in or out of wedlock, legitimation, paternity, all of those things, and residence in the U.S. or its possessions, right? I have somebody right now who his father was born in Puerto Rico in like 1930 something, and he never applied for anything, and so now we have to scramble to get records of like, okay, let's get all the records, social security records, taxes, proof that your parent did live in Puerto Rico for all their life, and so therefore you are a citizen. It's fun when you get to tell somebody, I think you're a citizen already, because they're thinking they're going to go through this whole process. And by the way, it doesn't matter that when you're speaking to them, they're 25 now, or they're 33 now, or they're 45 now. If they met the requirements when they were under 18, they met the requirements, and they can apply anytime after. So a lot of people might have confusion over that. I never applied for it before I was 18. That is not a requirement. You can apply when you're 65 and get it then, so long as all the requirements are met. That makes sense? Yeah. All right. So, is Victor a U.S. citizen? Esmeralda was born in Puerto Rico in 1960 and was raised in Puerto Rico. In 1980, at age 20, she moved to Mexico. In 1982, she met and married Santiago, a citizen of Mexico. Their child, Victor, was born on February 16th, 1989. So is Victor, their child, a U.S. citizen? And you're going to be looking at your charts and everything. Yes, because Esmeralda was present in the U.S. for at least 5 years before Victor was born, 2 of which were over age 14. No, because she was not present in the U.S. for at least 5 years after age 14. It's a play on words. Oh, yay, confusion. It might be the hunger. Is it hunger? Is it confusion? Okay, let's see. Thumbs up. Yes, because the rule is you have to reside in the U.S. for 5 years, only 2 of which have to be after the age of 14. So that other one was kind of tricking you guys. It was saying, oh, they didn't have it for 5 years after 14. That's not the requirement. The requirement is 2 after the age of 14. And that's all in your chart, and that's why there's experts to help answer questions and all of these things. Okay. Your resources are your call-in training manual, super handy. It's gotten better. As lawyers, we fought for these tabs. Unfortunately, they haven't made them perforated, so you can't take them and use them for something else. See what I think? I mean, nonprofit, you're always trying to get more things. So naturalization is section 2, definitely will have the rules about the exemption, the rules on the fees and all that, document renewal, how to obtain all your documents and things like that. I think we're at the end, and we're gonna answer some questions now. So if you have any questions, we're gonna ask that you look in your bag for the empty index cards and then pass them along to our staff who'll be on the side. Huh? Okay, okay, great. Cool.
I'm going to be eating pizza during the activity. Everybody, please pass your questions. We're going to try to limit it to the subjects that we talked about this morning, to the staff members collecting them. Please try to write your questions as questions and not statements like, you know, is the president reading Twitter right now?
Running behind, so let me start. My green card expired 1 month ago. Do I need to renew it before I can file an application for citizenship?
I think the audience can answer that question. That's correct. No, you don't need to renew your green card. In New York, at least, they do not require you to renew your green card. Maybe another jurisdiction might require something else. For New York and for our intents and purposes, no.
Alrighty. I am 50 years old and I've been living in the United States for over 20 years. I got my green card 5 years ago. Do I still have to take the English test to become a citizen?
Yes. Yes.
Wow, you guys can answer these yourselves. Yeah, so even though they've been here for 20 years, they only had their green card for 5 years. They need to have their green card for 20 years at the age of 50 to be able to take the test in Spanish. They still will be required to read, write English, and also take the test in English.
Okay, so we're having some difficulties with that mic, so I'm going to come here. How would USCIS really know if someone actually voted or registered to vote as a green card holder?
They do investigations. They do background investigations on each applicant, so that might come out during their background investigations.
Yeah, there is a way for anybody to check whether they're registered to vote. I mean, you can just go onto the Board of Elections website and look it up. Now, one of the questions I have is how long do they keep records of people who have voted? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I thought permanent residents can vote in the local election and not the national elections. Is that true?
Not in New York.
So they're not, I mean, maybe a school board election, but no, nothing that you actually have to go to the polling site for.
Okay, here's one that says, there's a 27-year-old man who did not register for selective service. He did not know that he had to register. He obtained a status information letter from the selective service system and submitted a letter explaining the situation. Should he apply to naturalize?
Yeah, if he meets the other requirements for naturalization, he could proceed forward with that. He has the status information letter, the explanation as to that he did not know that he had to register. So, yes.
Yeah.
Does derivative benefits apply to stepchildren?
No, unfortunately not. It has to be biological or adopted children, and adopted children, it's pretty specific also, and they have their own rules.
So here's a question that's coming to us from online, someone watching the live stream. Which anyone watching, you can use your chat box to send us questions. It says, in the case of filing for after 4 years and 1 day from returning from a trip that was over a year, can they file 3 months before that 4 years and 1 day, or do they have to wait to complete the 4 years and 1 day?
To wait to complete the 4 years and 1 day.
Yep.
Many LPR work illegally under the table and thus don't pay taxes, possibly a second job. Would you really recommend that they disclose this on the naturalization exam?
100%.
Yes.
Disclose everything, yes.
My green card expired 10 years ago. Can I still apply for citizenship?
Yeah, in New York. Yeah, in New York, if it's a 10-year green card and they're otherwise eligible to naturalize, they can proceed forward in New York. And I believe in Newark also, that district also, with an expired green card. Now, can I add on to that? there's always like a follow-up. Many people think that, oh, well, the naturalization application is pending and my green card is expired. Then they ask, oh, can I travel outside the United States? You cannot travel outside the United States on the expired green card. So just so you're aware of that. So if you need to travel outside the United States, you need to file to renew the green card.
Maddie is a citizen. She's pregnant, and her baby is born in the Dominican Republic. Is the baby a citizen, and how can he become a U.S. citizen?
So I don't think that we have enough facts there to be able to say whether that person would be born a citizen, because we don't know how many years the woman actually lived in the U.S. before the child was born. That could have been somebody who got their green card through a U.S. citizen spouse and applied for naturalization in 3 years and only been here 3 years, right? Or 4 years by the time the child was born and they were already a citizen. So can't answer that without more facts.
Okay. There's a child who's obtained a U.S. passport but was denied a certificate of citizenship. Is the child a USC, and is she allowed to vote?
Well, that's a little bit more complicated. So a U.S. passport.
Yeah. So let's repeat the question. So a child who obtained a U.S. passport, but when they applied for a certificate of citizenship, it was denied. Is the child a U.S. citizen, and is she allowed to vote?
I guess I would want a little bit more information, but it's hard to do it. But generally, a U.S. passport is conclusive evidence, as with a certificate of citizenship, that you are a U.S. citizen. So they carry the same weight. So if it was properly approved U.S. passport, then yes, they're a U.S. citizen. But I don't know.
Right.
I do know.
There definitely have been cases where the Department of State issues passports to people who did not derive U.S. citizenship, and so that's a case where we would probably look at the facts and say, okay, go through the analysis. Were you here under 18? Did your parent nats? Were you living with them? All of the above? Then fine, yes, you are a citizen and use your passport. A passport is proof of U.S. citizenship.
When a minor derives citizenship via his or her naturalized mother, does the parent have to apply for him separately?
They have to apply for that child to get a certificate of citizenship. That certificate will not come free, and it comes at the cost of almost $1,200 now.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the issue of voting. Are there exceptions for a person who is registered to vote by mistake?
Well, I think if I encountered a case like that I would try to get them to go through steps to deregister. Like, I don't know the proper terminology
Yeah,
to
I think so.
deregister, and make that. And if there's no other issues in the case, I think that would be something I would want legal representation for the person to move forward, because it is a deportable offense. So I wouldn't want them to move forward in the process on their own, because they would have to explain that to the immigration authorities.
But have there been people who registered to vote unknowingly and gotten citizenship? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave this ICE question for the afternoon session, okay? If your father's U.S. citizen and you've been in the U.S. for 3 years, can you apply no, or should you wait for 5 years?
Can you,
I think you
Yeah, can
need
you
to
repeat that?
repeat the question.
Yeah.
If your father is a U.S. citizen and you've been in the U.S. for 3 years, can you apply no, or should you wait for 5 years?
So I'm not
don't know
sure
the
if this
status.
is a derivative citizenship question or a regular naturalization. Most people have to wait 5 years to apply for citizenship. There is no 3-year rule if your parent is a citizen. However, if you're under 18 and you're living with your U.S. citizen parent, maybe you derived.
Okay. If your application for citizenship is denied, can you reapply?
Yes. If you meet the requirements and you overcome the basis for the denial, the previous denial, then you can file. You can apply again.
During a NATS interview, an applicant was asked if they worked during the last 5 years. He answered yes and also said yes on the N400. He worked, but he didn't file taxes. He otherwise passed the test, but has not received an approval notices yet. What should he do?
I mean, so the issue is good moral character, that the person filed taxes even, while they were working. If that officer wants to, they can deny the application, and then the person could reapply after they've filed taxes, in my opinion, for at least the last 5 years.
Okay. Why does a child of a diplomat who's born in the United States, not born a citizen and born a permanent resident instead?
Well, I think it's something in the statute. It says, like, if you are, I forget the exact language, but if you are born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, then you are a U.S. citizen at the time of birth. So I think it's from the language from the statute. So the people who are born in the United States who are not subject to the jurisdiction are certain children of certain diplomats. I think that's how.
Right.
Can an LPR sponsor children over 21 who are divorced? Do they qualify as unmarried?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they may.
Yes.
Moving on. Is USCIS flagging expired LPRs who try to file for citizenship without renewing the green card?
I haven't heard any
Not
reports of that.
Not that we've seen.
Not in New York?
Not in New York, for sure.
All right. If an LPR applies for a child over 21, what happens to the grandchildren if they are under 21? Will they be included in the mother's petition, or will the mother have to file separate petition later on down the line?
The unmarried children, so if I want to make sure I understood, the green card parent files for the
Unmarried.
A U.S. citizen parent
A US
files
citizen
for someone who is over 21.
Yep.
They have grandchildren that are under 21.
They could drive.
Okay.
All right.
That was a 10-part question.
So I applied for a U.S. passport and I was approved. Is it mandatory that I apply also for the certificate of citizenship, or is the passport alone enough of a document for my citizenship?
The passport should be enough. It's not mandatory to apply for the certificate of citizenship.
All right. This is a couple of parts. A person has applied for naturalization, and in the process, it is discovered that he or she did not get the green card validly, or there were probably issues with the adjustment, I think. Since this has now been disclosed in the naturalization application, would they face deportation?
I mean, that's kind of a complex question. Probably can't get into it here, but it depends on what wasn't disclosed or what was wrong with the adjustment. So a lot of times people, maybe they were married, but they said they were unmarried. That's okay in some cases, not okay in other cases. So it's kind of depends on the circumstances, depends on the facts of the case.
Okay, so this is another multi-part question. So what is the condition in the case of a child born abroad, but one of their parents was a permanent resident when the child was born? If the parent naturalizes, would that grant the child abroad citizenship? And what is required to get them into the U.S.?
So if we're talking about acquisition, so the child was already born outside the United States, and then the parent is inside the United States and naturalizes.
That's right.
So at that point, the child wouldn't derive citizenship because the child's outside of the United States. But if the child can come into the United States as a lawful permanent resident and is still under age 18 and meets the other requirements, then the child could derive at the time they arrive in the United States as a lawful permanent resident.
And in that case, how does the parent bring the child to the U.S.?
So the parent could go through the regular petitioning for, like, filing an I-130 and consular processing for the minor child.
Alrighty, if an application for N400 was denied, can that applicant who already has a U.S. passport travel using the passport?
If what was denied?
If your application, my apologies, for an N600 was denied, can you travel on your U.S. passport?
I would see an attorney first. So you may have been denied validly or not, right? And so it kind of depends on the facts of the case. Like I said, there have been erroneous passport issuances, and immigration, when you apply for the certificate of citizenship, they'll send you a letter and says, you have to send back that passport, don't use it again. And so I wouldn't do either or. I wouldn't just throw out the passport, and I wouldn't just go and travel, but I would kind of inquire.
Because sometimes, like, it's the Department of Homeland Security through the USCIS that's going to issue the certificate of citizenship, but it's the Department of State that is going to issue the U.S. passport, and sometimes they disagree over the evidence presented as to whether or not the person derived U.S. citizenship or acquired U.S. citizenship abroad. So I agree with Luce that you wouldn't just automatically believe DHS if they say, oh, we're denying the N-600 application because you didn't derive and you already have the U.S. passport. I agree that you want to look at the facts, like speak with a legal representative who can just go through the facts with you to see whether or not you are a U.S. citizen, because maybe DHS was correct and you did not derive and therefore you shouldn't be using the U.S. passport. But we don't know, because maybe Department of State was correct when they issued the U.S. passport. But now that that issue has come up, you want to resolve it by speaking with someone who can go through the facts with you to find out whether or not you are a U.S. citizen.
We have time, I think, for maybe one more one-part question.
Yeah, I have one here that's about ICE that we're also going to wait till the afternoon session when we talk more about that. But this one is about physical presence. It says, if an LPR is a border commuter, how does that affect their presence in a foreign, or how does their presence in a foreign country affect the physical presence requirement for naturalization?
Like a commuter status? You know, to be honest, we don't deal with commuter status here in New York. That's definitely probably something the West Coast deals with a lot more, or maybe even Buffalo and wherever there's border towns. There is no different requirement. The requirement is permanent resident, physical presence at least half of the last 5 years. So I would assume that those are still the same requirements. Again, in commuter status, right, they're looking at trips of 24 hours or more. So you really have to sit down and analyze, was it a 24-hour trip or not? Did you leave in the morning, come back at night? That's not a 24-hour trip.
Okay, do we have one more question, one more short question? Okay, we're gonna take the questions that were not answered and save them for the afternoon Q&A after lunch and after the next sections. We are going to ask you guys, if you are leaving for the day after this portion, please return your name badges and the paddles to staff members outside. We have an afternoon session that is going to resume promptly at 1:45, so we need to be back here. And again, no food, no drinks in this room. And lunch is on the second floor in the student dining room west. We have staff members who will show you guys how to get there. It's a little bit of a walk. You can also take the elevators. And see you back here at 1:45.
If they're leaving. At the door, outside.
I need water.
I know. We get to drink in here. Thanks. It's always, right beforehand, I'm always nervous.
I know.
It's normal.
There weren't that many.
I was worried Right. Well, that was like the kid with the dad with the 3 years. I was like, kid. And me? It's gonna give you
green card, not in this city, but it's not true everywhere else. But But the thing is, what's good about that making a mistake is that you won't forget ever again. You'll know forever. So sometimes there's something to be said for mistakes. So I'll wait for, I guess Tamara's gonna